you breathe with me, please? Taking a breath. I love our family room. Sorry, I'm a magpie. I got a little distracted. Start over again. Breathe in. And one more time, please. I always appreciate you breathing with me. Kind of set the tone here. So it's Labor Day weekend. I didn't know when I first came here whether Labor Day was celebrated here in Canada, but it is. Any excuse to have a 3-day weekend, right? Yeah. All over North America, people are celebrating Labor Day, including these guys. But you know, Labor Day, just like Amy read, but Labor Day actually started out as a workman's holiday. It was for those who toiled in the unions. And so, you know, they wanted at least one day where they could have it off and they would be honored like that. What's happened is that it caught on, and so pretty soon it was going to be the first Monday in September, and it's been like that for probably 100 years. So because it started out as work, what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about work, and Amy's reading was so perfect about talking about work. So let me ask you a question. Why do you work? Money. Yeah? You know, yeah, that's a big part of it. You know, we work to earn a living. We work to get paid. But for most of us, that's not the only reason why we work. We enjoy being challenged. Yes? Yes? We like working with other people. We like being around other people. Absolutely. We want to be productive members of society. That's another reason why we work. But what we may not realize is that with almost everything in life, is that work can be a spiritual practice. That reading was perfect. We could probably go home now because that reading was so perfect. We work, and as we're working, it can be a spiritual practice. It is a means of enhancing our consciousness. And consciousness is another word for awareness. So it can be a means of enhancing our awareness of the universe and how we fit in. Because consciousness is all about recognizing that we are co-creators with life. And so everything we do can be a powerful spiritual practice if we see it that way. So there's a very famous quote, I just love this. How you do anything is how you do everything. Now let that sink in for a minute. How you do anything is how you do everything. In other words, the consciousness with which you move through life and I move through life, it applies to everything we do. Am I right? Yes. Are you out there? Can I see you? Yes, absolutely. But when we are talking about devoting our lives to more fully expressing God, to allowing our divine selves to be known, anything that we do enhances how we're showing up in life. Any way we are enhances how we show up in life. So I want you to think about this for just a second. The majority of us spend more time on our jobs than we do with our family, our spiritual center, our children, and our friends. Just let that sink in for a minute. We spend more time than we do with our loved ones. So if we spend that much time doing the job that we have chosen to do, because nobody is forcing you to do the job that you're doing right now, if we spend so much time doing that, then shouldn't we be aware of how we are thinking and what we are giving out into the universe when we're thinking about our jobs? Can I get an amen to that? Because one of the basic metaphysical laws that I always talk about, and you have heard about, and that is the law of attraction. And the law of attraction basically tells us that what we put out into the world is what we are receiving back every time. So if I'm putting out a I hate my job kind of thought process and kind of vibe, then I am going to attract back to me a job that corresponds to what I'm putting out. Every time. In fact, Ernest Holmes had this to say. He says, everyone automatically attracts to himself just what he is. Therefore, wherever we are, however intolerable the situation may be, we are just where we belong. There is no power in the universe but ourselves that can free us. OMG! I know! So in case you're wondering if I'm talking about that self-responsibility thing again, I am. Anybody besides me getting tired of having to be self-responsible all the time? Yeah. And yet, if you're not responsible, and if we're not self-responsible, would we want somebody else to be responsible for the choices that we have in our lives? Would you rather be self-responsible? Yeah. So if we're going to be in a teaching like this, we're going to get used to being self-responsible because we teach the law of attraction, we live by the law of attraction, the law of cause and effect, and that is what you put out is what you receive back. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of my personal story. Some of you have heard this before, but bear with me because it fits in with the topic. Every boss I ever had was a jerk. You're laughing, but I suspect there's some truth to that. What are the odds that absolutely every boss I ever had was a jerk? I've had, say, 10 jobs in my adult life, right? I was a retail clerk, I was a bartender, I was a gas station attendant, I was a secretary, I actually moved my way up to human resources manager, and every single boss in every single job that I had was absolutely terrible. They were mean, they were disrespectful, they didn't know who I was. Now never mind the fact that the first few jobs I had, I thought the world owed me a living. And never mind the fact that during my drinking days and bartending days, I probably drank my salary's worth every week. Forget the fact that after I sobered up, I was so full of myself that I really, really did think that I should end up at the top of the corporate ladder right away. It reminds me of a story. This young kid graduates from MIT, and he goes in for his first job opening, or his first job interview, and the guy who's interviewing says, "Okay, so tell me what you expect." And the kid says, "Well, graduate from MIT, so I'd like a salary of $150,000 a year, and 6 weeks of vacation, and profit sharing." And the guy who's interviewing him says, "Well, how about that we add like 50% profit sharing and 8 weeks vacation?" And the kid says, "Wow, you're kidding." And the guy says, "Well, yeah, but you started it." But that's true, isn't it? So throughout all those years in my life, none of my bosses treated me with the kind of respect that I thought that I deserved. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know how smart I was, how popular I was. Didn't they know how much I had to offer? But the bottom line is, they didn't know that. Guess why? Because that's not how I was showing up. That's not how I was showing up. I was showing up as someone who was willing, instead of being willing to do whatever it took to get the job done, I did just enough. It's true. Instead of being a team player, I wanted to be a star. Instead of loving what I did, I looked always for the greener grass, and the more money, and the better pay, and the more everything. And guess what happened? I got fired. A lot. because I spent so much of my time being mad and being resentful. Eventually, my bosses, even though they maybe did know that I was kind of smart and that I had a little something to offer, but they stopped putting up with my holier than thou, high and mighty thing, despite my talents, and they would fire me. And then I was, oh, how could you? How could you? How could they do this to me? I was so loyal. I was so good. But I wasn't. I had the quintessential attitude of the world owes me a living, and a good one at that. So you're probably now wondering what happened, because obviously I now have the world's best job, right? This is my job. Don't tell anybody. This is my job. I love it. I love it. So what happened? Did the market change? The job market change? Did I win the lottery all of a sudden? I decided to become a minister because I didn't have to work for a living? What do you think changed? I changed. My attitude changed. My consciousness changed. Instead of looking at my job for what they could do for me, I shifted to my attitude to what can I do? How can I make a difference? I started looking at my work as a way to give, rather than simply as a way to receive. And when I shifted, my work shifted. When I changed, my work changed. Eric Butterworth, who wrote this beautiful book called Spiritual Economics, wrote this: work is and should be considered by every worker a giving process. Let your work, whatever it may involve, be an outworking of the creative flow, engaged in through the sheer joy of fulfilling your divine nature. Let your work, whatever it may involve, be an outworking of the creative flow. In other words, when we see our work as a giving process, we're not only prospering our employer, but we're also prospering ourselves. Because when we give in our jobs, we receive. It's that flow that I'm talking about. This immutable law of what goes around comes around. And the truth is, anybody can be happy and fulfilled in their job. Anybody can. A janitor can be just as happy as a rock star. It's all a matter of how you see life. Are you a giver to life, or are you a taker? Oliver Wendell Holmes said, "Every calling is great when greatly pursued." Oh, come on! Men in kilts, cleaning swimming pools. No peeking, it says. Come on, you guys, I work hard to make you laugh, all right? Now, I know that it sounds a little bit like a motivational poster. Yeah. I get this, but there is truth in what I'm saying, because when we stay in this attitude of resentment and of anger and of feeling unfulfilled, we are blocking our good. We are blocking our good. We're blocking our creativity. We're blocking our expression. Because that's why we're here. We're here to express. We are here to be the fullest expression of the divine that we can possibly be in everything that we do all of the time. So if we spend our time in resentment and frustration, we are blocking that expression. But when we come from an attitude of giving of ourselves fully and completely, what happens is that those channels open up. We allow the flow of the universe to be expressed through us. And when that happens, who cares what we do? We are being God in expression. And the wonderful thing is, as our consciousness changes, our jobs change. And I have proof about this, but I wanted to share this wonderful Eric Butterworth quote again. When you discipline yourself to earn your wings every day on the job, one of two things will happen. One, your consciousness will bring about a change in the job, making it right for you and you for the company. Or two, another job will open up for you, and you will be able to leave in a way that is beneficial to all concerned. This is incredible. When you learn to earn your wings, one of two things will happen. Either the job will change and it will become right for you, or you will be lifted up into another thing. The reason I'm so passionate about this is because that is exactly what happened for me. So, I was in this particular job. I told you I was going to tell you my story, right? I was in this particular job for quite a long time, right? And I had lots of resentment because, of course, all of my bosses in that company were jerks, right? They were lousy bosses. Nobody else thought so, but I knew they were lousy bosses, right? And so I had all this resentment at work, and what happened was I developed carpal tunnel syndrome. Yeah. And I eventually ended up having surgery for the carpal tunnel syndrome. Now, I was a practitioner at the time, and I was in ministerial training, so what was happening, even though I was feeling resentful, my consciousness was still changing. I knew in my heart of hearts that eventually something was going to shift, and I would be lifted out of that position. Well, sure enough, what happened was that I went to have the surgery, first on my right hand, then on my left hand, and when I returned, my boss told me that they had discovered while I was gone that they didn't really need me anymore. Now that sounds cold, but it was really an answer to prayer. It was an answer to treatment. Because I was able to leave a job that I was far finished with, got a nice severance package, and I was able to take my time looking for another job while I was completing ministerial training. So I went to work for a lady that I just loved. Oh, she and I just bonded immediately. And because I had had this attitude shift about giving, about being in service with the company, and here's the ironic thing, I was basically doing exactly the same job that I was for the other company for less money, but I loved it. I had changed my consciousness, therefore my attitude about being on the job changed. So long story short, I continued working there with this attitude of giving and serving, and within 8 months, the wonderful opportunity to be a senior minister of my first spiritual center opened up in Southern California, which is unheard of. Unheard of. And I'm working and I'm doing my thing, and this opportunity comes up. My dream job. As Bernard Baruch said, make a success of the job at hand is the best step toward the kind that you want. Even after all this time, I've been doing this 20 years. Even after all this time, I pinch myself sometimes. Like I just say, this is my job. Oh my gosh, this is my job. But the fact remains is that while I stayed in an attitude of resentment and feeling unfulfilled at work, I went nowhere. Except from job to job with the basic same circumstances. I was the common denominator. But when I became a giver to life instead of a taker, my life changed. It's what we teach. So I want to close with a story that illustrates this point. This is such a powerful story. So an elderly carpenter was getting ready to retire. And he told his employer, who was a contractor, that he was going to leave the house building industry. He wanted to live a simpler life and a more leisurely life with his wife, and spend time with his kids. And even though he wasn't going to be making quite as much money, he just needed to retire. It was time, and he just figured he'd be able to get by. So the contractor was sorry to see that his good worker was going to be leaving him, but he said, if you would just do me one more favor, if you would build one more house for me as a personal favor, I would be so grateful. Well, the carpenter said yes, but his heart wasn't in it. You know, he was ready to go. So he resorted to shoddy craftsmanship, and he used inferior materials, and it was kind of an unfortunate end to what had been a very, very dedicated career. And when the carpenter finished his work, the contractor, the employer, came to inspect the house. And as he walked in and he looked around, and he handed the keys to the carpenter. And he said, "Here, this is your house. This is my gift to you." The carpenter was shocked, of course. He hadn't expected that. What a shame. If he had only known he was building his own house, he would have done things far differently. And so it is with us. We build our lives one day at a time, often putting in less than our best into the building that we're building. And then we realize that we are actually living in the house that we built. So our attitude and our choices were going into that house. And what we are thinking about, what we are doing now, is going into the house that we are going to be living in the future. So build a house you can be proud of. Be a giver to life, and it will come back every time. Happy Labor Day. I love you, and so it is.